A year ago, I moved to the city. I was 26 and wanted to make friends. So, I decided to host a sleepover. I thought it would help build connections. My apartment was cozy, filled with bright colors and art on the walls. It felt like the kind of place where laughter should echo. When my friends arrived, I was excited. We gathered in the living room, sharing snacks and telling ghost stories. The atmosphere was light, and I loved hearing their laughter. Then, I noticed the lights flicker in the hallway. I shrugged it off. It had to be an electrical issue. When I stepped into the hallway, the flickering stopped. I glanced back at my friends. They seemed unaware, still laughing and enjoying themselves. But I felt a chill creep down my spine. I thought it was just my imagination playing tricks. Later, around midnight, I heard a soft whisper. It made me hesitate. I looked at my friends. They had fallen silent. I thought it was just a late hour, or maybe I was tired. But the whispers grew louder. They were right there, close to me. The weight on my chest felt heavier. I glanced around the room. Something felt off. My friends began to share dreams they had been having. Each dream was oddly similar, and it bothered me. I could feel my heart racing. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching us. As the night dragged on, the lights flickered again. This time it felt intentional, like a warning. I looked at Sarah, who was pale. Her eyes darted around the room. I asked if she was okay, but she didn't answer. Suddenly, the mood shifted. Everyone had suddenly realized we were all feeling strange. It felt like we were connected, sharing not just the space but thoughts. I tried to shake it off, blaming it on the late hour and too much sugar. Then, something happened that I can't forget. Rachel mentioned a childhood memory. It was nothing much, just vague. Then Kayla spoke up. I remember that too. I felt icy fingers grip my spine. Everyone nodded. Why did we all remember the same things? It felt wrong. We started sharing our memories, but they didn't add up. They jumbled together. I felt confused and scared. I think I asked if we were alone, but it got lost in the chatter. Then, I saw a shadow race across the room. Did you see that? I yelled, but no one answered. They were staring at me like I was a ghost. The night ended, and it felt like a weight had lifted, but everything changed afterward. My friends didn't come around as much. I felt the heaviness of unspoken questions. Was it just my imagination? Did something strange really happen that night? I still wonder. It was just a sleepover, but I can't shake the feeling that something lingered, something I couldn't see. The whispers haunt me, and I'll never know what we shared that night. The weeks passed, and I felt more isolated than ever. My friends didn't reach out, and I didn't have the courage to call them. Every time I thought of that night, a chill shot through me. It was always in my mind, like a whisper I couldn't shake. One afternoon, while scrolling through social media, I stumbled upon a post from Rachel. She had shared a photo of what looked like an old, stained book. The caption read, "Found this in my attic. Gave me the creeps." Curious, I clicked on it. The book looked worn and ancient, pages yellowed with age. It reminded me of the stories we had shared that night, the eerie connections and shared memories. I decided to reach out to Rachel. I typed a message, my fingers hovering over the send button for a moment. Should I mention the sleepover? I finally wrote, "Hey, I saw the book you posted. What's it about?" It felt odd, but I was desperate for a connection, any connection. She replied almost instantly, which surprised me. "It's a diary from the 70s. This family lived in my old house. Strange things happened there. I'll show you when we meet." Her enthusiasm worried me. I wasn't sure I wanted to know more. A few days later, I made plans to visit her. I walked into her cozy apartment, trying to shake off the anxious feeling swirling in my stomach. I found Rachel sitting on her couch, the old book opened in her hands. The room felt heavier, the air thick with anticipation. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a paragraph. I leaned over to read it. The words spoke of shadows, whispered voices, and shared memories. My heart raced. These writings are eerily similar to what happened during the sleepover, I murmured. Rachel's eyes widened. I felt the same. There are stories about groups feeling connected, almost sharing thoughts. It gives me chills. As she spoke, I could see her excitement change to fear. We spent hours poring over the book. Each story we read sent shivers down my spine. I couldn't help but draw connections between what happened at the sleepover and the entries in the diary. I felt a sense of urgency, as though we were uncovering something meaningful but dangerous. The sun began to set, casting long shadows across the room. I glanced at the window, watching the light fade. A sudden draft swept through the apartment, causing the pages of the diary to flutter. I shivered and looked at Rachel, who was staring at it now, her expression tense. Then it happened. The lights flickered. My heart stopped as the same eerie chill wrapped around us. This wasn't just a coincidence anymore. What if we're not supposed to be reading this? I whispered, my voice barely audible over the pounding of my heart. Before Rachel could answer, a loud crash came from the kitchen, breaking the spell. We both jumped to our feet, adrenaline surging through us. I couldn't shake the sensation that we had awakened something. A part of me wanted to run, but another part was drawn in, desperate to uncover the truth. I took a step toward the kitchen, fear mixing with a strange curiosity. That's when I heard it again, a whisper. It was coming from the shadows. I froze. Everything felt familiar and terrifying all at once. Rachel took my arm, her eyes wide with fear. Did you hear that? She asked. I nodded, unable to speak. The whispering grew louder. It surrounded us, pulling me deeper into the unknown. What had we uncovered? The night was just beginning. I stepped cautiously toward the kitchen, my heart pounding with each creak of the floor beneath me. Rachel followed close behind, her hand gripping my arm like a lifeline. The air around us felt charged, almost electric, and I could sense we were about to cross some invisible line. As we entered the kitchen, I noticed something on the floor. Broken glass shimmered like tiny stars scattered across the tile. It looked like the remains of a picture frame. I felt a chill creep up my spine. That frame had held a photo of Rachel and her family, one I had seen during previous visits. But where was the photo now? Did you drop this? I asked, bending down to examine the shards. Rolling them between my fingers, I could feel their jagged edges. Rachel shook her head. No. I haven't been in here since we started reading. Her voice quivered as she stepped back. More whispers seemed to thrum around us, echoing our unease. The diary was still open on the living room table, beckoning us with its dark secrets. I glanced back at it, and through the dim light, the words appeared to shimmer on the page. The urge to know more clawed at me, but was it curiosity or fear driving me? With a shaky breath, we turned to leave the kitchen. That's when I noticed something out of place. A shadow flickered across the wall, moving in a way that wasn't natural. It darted behind the refrigerator, quick and silent. Did you see that? I whispered, my voice barely a breath. Rachel nodded, the color draining from her cheeks. What was that? I wanted to run, but my legs felt glued to the floor. Maybe we should get out of here, I suggested, trying to sound brave. But Rachel's eyes were glued to the dark corner, her expression frozen in fear. Suddenly, the whispers escalated into a loud cacophony, swirling around us like a tempest. The atmosphere thickened, wrapping around us like a blanket. I could hardly breathe. We need to go. Now. I grabbed Rachel's hand, pulling her toward the door. As we stumbled into the living room, I heard something behind me, a voice breaking through the noise. It was a soft, eerie call that seemed to beckon us. Stay! I caught a glimpse of something in the corner of my eye. It was a figure, distorted and shadowy, hovering near the doorway we had just passed. Panic surged through me, and I turned back to Rachel. Did you? I started, but the look on her face silenced me. She was staring at something behind me. I could feel the air grow colder as the shadows shifted. I turned around slowly, every fiber in me screaming to look away. But some pull, An irresistible force kept my gaze locked. She was right, there was something there, lurking just out of sight. Then everything went dark. The lights flickered once more and gave way to complete blackness. "Rachel!" I shouted, my voice cutting through the silence. The overwhelming pressure around me built, pushing in from all sides. I held my breath, waiting for the unfamiliar to reveal itself. And just like that, I found myself alone. The darkness swallowed me whole. I gasped, my lungs burning in the oppressive blackness. A part of me wanted to scream, to shatter the silence with anything, but all I could manage was a shaky breath. I strained to listen for Rachel, but all that filled my ears was a dull, throbbing sound that felt like it was pulsating from deep within the house. I took a cautious step forward, my foot seeking the familiar sensation of solid ground beneath me. The cold tile was a small comfort, grounding me in the moment. "Rachel?" I called again, but my voice trembled and fell flat, swallowed by the shadows. As I moved deeper into the room, I noticed an odd flickering. A faint light emerged in the corner, almost like a candle's flame dancing timidly. I squinted, trying to focus, but it was too dim to reveal anything substantial. I felt a pull towards it, a compulsion that urged me onward. An icy breeze whispered past me, brushing my cheek. I stopped, heart racing. I wasn't alone. The feeling wrapped around me tighter, and dread pulled in my stomach. I turned, half expecting to catch a glimpse of Rachel. But it was just the darkness, impenetrable and thick. Suddenly, the light flickered and brightened. I rushed toward it, desperate for its warmth. As I drew closer, I saw what it illuminated. The fireplace, cold and empty, flickered with a strange, blue flame. It was surreal, casting a haunting glow on the walls. I realized it wasn't a fire but more a projection of something unsettling, a scene playing out in an echo of light. My eyes widened as the figures appeared, shadowy silhouettes mimicking the people I recognized. Rachel and I, laughing from an old memory, hovered within the frame. But then the scene shifted into something else, something darker. I saw us reading from the diary, chanting words that felt wrong. Fear gripped me, and I stumbled back. My head spun, and I closed my eyes, trying to shake off the vision. Maybe I was just imagining things. It had to be my mind playing tricks. But before I could convince myself of that, the flame shifted again, and I saw the shadow cloaked in darkness. It loomed larger, reminiscent of what I thought I'd seen before. Cold dread washed over me. This time, it was just an eerie figure. It had a face, a blurred, menacing visage that seemed to twist and contort, echoing my worst fears. "Who are you?" My voice cracked, barely audible over the rising tempest of whispers drowning out my thoughts. Instead of an answer, the shadows lunged toward me. Instinct kicked in, and I turned, sprinting back toward the kitchen. I needed to find Rachel. I wouldn't abandon her. As I dashed, the lights flickered once more, and just as I reached the doorway, something cold wrapped around my ankle, yanking me down. I fell hard onto the floor, pain radiating through my body. I looked back, a surge of adrenaline pushing me to crawl away from whatever was holding me. The shadows pulsed, and I felt them crawling along my skin. I needed to resist. Panic surged in my chest, and I scrambled to my feet. Then the light burst back on, blinding me momentarily. But when it faded, the kitchen was empty. The shadows had receded, but the air was still charged with an unseen tension. "Rachel?" I shouted, straining to hear any response over the deafening silence. The knot of dread tightened. I was running out of time. I turned and scanned the room, my heart screaming for answers. That's when I saw it, a glimmer on the countertop. The diary lay wide open, the pages fluttering as if caught in a ghostly wind. And there, scribbled on the final page, was one chilling line: "Leave before nightfall." The realization washed over me like a tidal wave. We were already too late. I felt the swirling dread settling deep within me, an unsettling heaviness pinning me in place. The diary's words echoed in my mind: "Leave before nightfall." But night had fallen, and I was still here, surrounded by the remnants of the past and haunted by shadows. "Rachel!" I called again, my voice more desperate as the uncertainty clawed at my throat. There was no answer. The kitchen was unnaturally still, the quiet almost suffocating. I wiped my palms against my jeans, trying to steady my racing heart. If I didn't find Rachel soon, I feared the shadows would close in around me again, dragging me into that unnameable dark. I stepped toward the doorway leading to the living room. The flickering flames of the fireplace had died down. The warmth that had briefly comforted me was gone, replaced by a clammy chill that raised the hairs on my arms. My eyes darted to the walls, half expecting to see the shadowy figure watching me again. I needed a plan. As I forced myself to take deep, calming breaths, I remembered the layout of the house. There were 3 rooms upstairs, Rachel's bedroom, a small bathroom, and a spare room no one used anymore. The pull of dread in my gut urged me to head upstairs, but a greater fear of what lay waiting there held me back. Focus, I muttered under my breath. I needed to choose. I had to believe Rachel was still up there, and that she needed me. I took a step into a hallway, the floor creaking beneath me, and began climbing the stairs. Each step echoed against the walls, making me feel exposed and vulnerable. A cold draft rushed past, as if something unseen were trailing just behind me. I spun around, half expecting to see a form looming in the shadows, but there was nothing. The hallway was dim as I reached the top. The door to Rachel's room was ajar, and a soft light flickered from within. I pushed the door open, heart pounding. The sight before me left me breathless. The room was in disarray, clothes strewn across the floor, pillows tossed haphazardly off the bed. Rachel was slumped over at her desk, her long hair cascading over her face like a curtain hiding her from the world. Rachel! I rushed over, shaking her gently. Wake up! She didn't respond. I peered closer, concern flooding my senses. Her hand rested on the open diary, the same one I had seen in the kitchen. It was open to a page filled with frantic scrawls. My vision blurred for a moment, and the words seemed to shift, though I couldn't make out their meaning. Suddenly, a soft whisper cut through the stillness. Help us! It was faint but chilling. I glanced around, panic surging back. Who was speaking? My heart thumped erratically as I struggled to comprehend. Rachel! I yelled again, panic creeping in. I let go of her shoulder and turned at the sound of footsteps behind me. The door slammed shut. My breath caught in my throat. I was trapped. The flickering light above went out, plunging me into darkness. One moment I had been reaching for Rachel, the next, I was alone, swallowed whole by the shadows again. Then a low growl, a guttural sound that echoed through my very bones, started emanating from the corners of the room. Whatever it was coming for me. Panic consumed me. No, no, no! I choked out, pounding on the door with my fists. Just when I thought I was going to break down, the handle rattled. I felt a rush of hope, but it froze at the sight of the figure standing behind the door, a blurred silhouette with dark voids where eyes should be, watching me, waiting. I backed away slowly, horrified. The thing in the dark reached for me, and I realized that the true nightmare was just beginning. I stumbled back, my heart racing as the figure pressed against the door. It was close enough that I could almost feel its chill. I could barely breathe. Desperately, I glanced around the room for another way out. The window was my only option, but it was small and sealed tight. Fear clawed at me, pushing me into action. The figure on the other side of the door moved slowly, deliberately. I could hear the rasp of its breath, heavy and uneven. I needed to make the jump. I moved toward the window, ignoring the looming presence behind me. I would rather take my chances outside than face whatever lurked in the darkness. As I reached the window, I turned the latch, but it wouldn't budge. It was stuck, or maybe something was holding it in place from the other side. I could hear the scratching now, like nails against wood. Panic surged once more. I looked back towards the door. The figure was too quiet, it felt like a predator, waiting for the right moment. Rachel! I shouted again, but my voice sounded weak and desperate even to me. There was no answer. I took a deep breath and pulled harder on the window. With a loud crack, the latch finally gave way. I pushed up on the window, but it wouldn't open all the way. The chill of the night air brushed against my skin as I squeezed through the gap. I felt the cool breeze on my face, but the moment I was halfway out, the growling escalated. I could see the figure now, its form solidifying as it moved towards me, a dark shape in the moonlight. My heart raced as I braced myself to drop to the ground. Suddenly, the sound of glass breaking filled the air, and I turned just in time to see the figure lunging forward, reaching for me. I dropped and rolled away, narrowly escaping its grasp. But now I was out in the yard, cold grass beneath me, shadows stretching in every direction. I looked back at the window, the figure now standing at the edge, framed by the light of the moon. I couldn't make out any features, but I felt its gaze on me, heavy and menacing. Then, as if sensing my fear, it stepped back, disappearing into the darkness of the room. Adrenaline pushed me to my feet. I didn't know where I was going, but I had to get away from that house. I sprinted across the yard, glancing back only once. The window was still open, but now it was quiet. I didn't want to see what might happen next. I could hear branches snapping in the distance as I darted into the trees lining the property. I ducked behind a thick trunk, trying to catch my breath and wrap my head around what just happened. The whispers returned, filling the air around me. Help us, they were clearer now, and I felt a shiver run down my spine. Who were they? And why was I drawn back to the house? There was a mystery buried here that I couldn't ignore, but my instincts screamed at me to run. Pushing through the underbrush, I made my way deeper into the woods, unsure of what lay ahead but driven by a need to escape the darkness trailing behind me. And then, through the trees, I saw a flicker of light. My heart sank and soared at the same time. Someone was out here. But as I approached, something told me that perhaps the dangers inside the house were only the beginning. I crept closer, the flickering light growing brighter as I approached. It danced amidst the trees, casting shadows that made me second-guess every step I took. I felt vulnerable and exposed, painfully aware of the darkness surrounding me. As I neared, I could make out a small clearing. In the center stood a fire pit, its embers glowing warmly, though I could see no one. A circle of stones surrounded the pit, half buried in the ground. It looked like a makeshift campsite, but it felt more inviting than the house I'd just fled. "Hello?" I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. Silence stretched in response, hanging in the air like a thick fog. My mind raced. Had someone else seen the figure too? Were they in danger? Before I could decide my next move, I heard it again. The whispers? Much clearer now, they floated around me. Help us, help us, I scanned the area for the source. It felt surreal, like a scene from a horror movie, a sound I shouldn't be hearing in the broad moonlight. Panic surged within me. I wasn't alone, but I hadn't seen anyone yet. I took another cautious step into the clearing. The light was coming from a lantern hanging from a nearby tree, swaying gently with an unseen breeze. That's when I spotted something on the ground, a backpack, half open and abandoned. It was filthy, covered in dirt, and had a small patch that read Camp Pinewood. My heart dropped. Rachel and I had gone to Camp Pinewood years ago. What were the chances someone else had been out here too? I knelt beside the backpack, a sense of urgency pressing me to investigate. Inside I found a notebook. Flipping through its pages, I saw sketches, notes, and strange symbols I didn't recognize. Then I froze. One page had a drawing of the very figure I'd seen earlier, detailed and chilling. Suddenly, I felt a presence behind me. I turned slowly, the notebook still clutched in my hands, my mind racing with thoughts of how I might be surrounded. The shadows shifted, and then I saw a face. A girl, her features pale and strained, stood just beyond the tree line. "Please," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You need to help us." My breath hitched. "Who are you? What's going on?" She looked over her shoulder, urgency lacing her wide eyes. "They're coming. You have to go." Without another word, she turned and bolted into the woods, leaving me once again alone in the clearing. My instincts screamed at me to follow her, but what if it was a trap? The fire flickered, casting ghostly shadows around the clearing. I glanced down at the notebook one more time. That drawing, I couldn't shake the feeling that I needed to learn more about it. Just as I made up my mind, the whispers grew louder, turning into frantic cries. I was torn between the urge to flee and the need to discover what lay hidden. Then, without warning, a chilling howl pierced through the trees, echoing against the night sky. It wasn't a wolf, but something much more sinister. I felt the ground beneath me tremble as the sounds grew closer, encroaching upon my retreat. I had to make a choice: chase after the girl, whoever she was, or find shelter. But deep down, I knew I wasn't safe for long. I hesitated, caught in a frantic moment. The whispers intensified, wrapping around me like a chilling blanket. I took a deep breath, my heart racing, and decided to follow the girl. There was something desperate in her plea. I darted into the trees, trying to stay alert. The forest loomed dark and menacing, branches reaching out like fingers, ready to snag me. I stumbled over roots, panic flooding my veins. "Wait!" I called, but my voice felt swallowed by the night. As I pressed further into the woods, I spotted a dim light ahead. It was weak but steady. Was that where she had gone? I picked up my pace. My thoughts were a jumble, a mixture of fear and confusion. What had I gotten myself into? Reaching the light, I found another small clearing. This one was different. A circle of stones encircled another fire pit, but it was cold and dark, no flames here. The air felt heavy, as if the trees were holding their breath. And then I saw her again, standing near the edge, her back to me, frozen in place. "Why are you just standing there?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. She turned to face me, her expression a mix of relief and fear. "I didn't think you'd follow." Before I could respond, a rustling sound erupted from the shadows. My heart dropped as figures emerged, shimmering in the low light. They were not entirely human, their eyes glowing and their skin reflecting a strange aura. They moved slowly, almost cautiously, as if assessing me. "Stay back!" I shouted, feeling the need to assert some control. But the words barely left my lips before one of the figures stepped forward. It looked at the girl beside me with an intensity that raised the hair on my neck. "They're here for you," it said, its voice low and haunting. I glanced at the girl, searching for an explanation. "They want my help," she breathed, her eyes darting to the figures. "And they think you can help too." "Help? For what?" My mind raced with the implications. Were these things related to the whispers? To the backpack? I felt trapped, not in a physical space but in this moment, surrounded by strange beings whose intentions swirled in the air like the fog pressing around us. Just then, a howl echoed again through the trees, closer this time. The figures tensed, their eyes darting toward the sound. I could feel the ground vibrate beneath me, the noise bouncing ominously through the stillness of the night. "Run!" I shouted, the instinct to flee kicking in as fear gripped my chest. The girl grabbed my arm, pulling me back toward the darkness. We dashed into the trees together, but I had no idea where we were going or what awaited us. The whispering rose to a deafening crescendo around me, a cacophony of voices pleading, calling out for assistance. "Help us! Help us!" I forced myself to push through my fear and focus on putting one foot in front of the other. But everything felt wrong. I couldn't escape the feeling that someone or something was watching us. Then, suddenly, we stumbled into another clearing. My breath caught as I realized it wasn't just any clearing. It was the campsite from the notebook. The fire pit stood in the center, but now there were ominous, twisted markings painted on the stones. "That S when I saw it," I whispered, locked in shock at the familiar sight. The girl looked at me, her face pale. "We have to leave now." But before I could move, everything went dark. The ground beneath us shuddered, and I felt a presence closing in, making it clear that this was just the beginning. I blinked, trying to adjust to the sudden darkness. My heart hammered in my chest. Where were we? The sounds of the forest faded, replaced by a chilling silence that wrapped around us like a vice. "Can you see?" I whispered, feeling the girl's presence beside me, yet seeming so far away. No, she replied, her voice trembling. But we have to find a way out of this. Panic surged through me. I reached out, feeling for her in the pitch black. My fingers brushed against her arm. We stood paralyzed, waiting for the darkness to reveal its intentions. Just as I opened my mouth to say something, an eerie glow ignited in the distance. "It's back," the girl muttered, and I could hear the tremor in her voice. As the light grew brighter, I made out the figures from before emerging again, gliding through the trees with an otherworldly grace. They looked even closer now, their faces calm yet unsettling. "Why are they coming for me?" she asked, almost to herself. "They want to speak," one of the figures said, its voice echoing in the stillness. I flinched, instinctively stepping back, but the girl held her ground. "We need to leave," I insisted, but she was focused on the glowing beings, her expression a mix of curiosity and fear. "They don't mean us harm," she said, barely audible. "I feel it." "But what do they want?" Before anyone could answer, a sharp crack of a branch shattered the stillness behind us. The figures turned, finally acknowledging the noise. I couldn't resist the urge to look. I spun around, and that's when I saw it. A pair of eyes, luminous and vivid, stared at us from the brush. The howl that had plagued us earlier rose again, louder and more furious. At that moment, I realized the howl had been calling for something or someone. "They're not alone," I said, panic creeping back in. "Run!" the girl screamed, and without giving it a second thought, I grabbed her hand and pulled her along. We darted toward the edge of the clearing, but my heart sank as I realized we were trapped between the figures and whatever lurked in the shadows. The whispering rose once more, echoing around us, "Join us, help us get away from me." I yelled at the figures, my fear exploding into rage. But instead of retreating, they stepped closer, their eyes shimmering like tiny stars. I felt each step they took was pulling me towards them, drawing me into their web of whispers, their plea mixing with the threatening howl behind us. I turned back toward the trees, trying to choose a direction to run, but before I could make a decision, the ground gave a possessive shake beneath us. The girl gasped, her grip tightening around my hand. "We have to trust them," she said, her voice steadier than I expected. "Trust them? How can we trust anything here?" I shot back, my mind racing. But deep down, a flicker of her conviction made me hesitate. Suddenly, the trees parted as if the darkness itself was pulling away, revealing a narrow path that led deeper into the woods, illuminated by strange bioluminescent plants. The figures gazed down the path expectantly. "Now!" one of them urged, its voice a compelling whisper. The howl behind us flared again, furious and close. We had a choice. Take the risk with the figures or face whatever threat was lurking in the shadows. Taking a deep breath, I squeezed the girl's hand tighter. "This way." We ran down the path, determined to uncover what lay ahead, even as the echoes of the night chased us into the unknown. I stumbled down the glowing path, the faint light of the bioluminescent plants guiding our steps as we pressed forward. The darkness behind us surged with chaotic energy, howls tearing through the silence like jagged nails. I felt the girl's grip tighten, our breaths quickening, the desperation of the moment urging us onward. "Why are they helping us?" I gasped, stealing a fleeting glance back at the shimmering figures trailing behind us. They moved in sync, their forms flickering like shadows, watching over us as we fled. The whispers trailed off, becoming distant echoes, their intent shrouded in mystery. "I don't know," the girl admitted, pushing her hair from her face, her expression fierce yet uncertain. "But I can feel something. Like they want us to escape." We ran deeper along the path, heartbeats pounding in tune with the distant howling. The atmosphere thickened, whispers swirling around us, weaving together a tapestry of fears and secrets from the night. Each step felt like breaking through a barrier, as if the realm we traversed was shifting, revealing hidden dimensions. Just as I thought we'd find solace, the ground trembled beneath our feet. The light around us pulsed, and the whispers escalated into a frantic cacophony. I faltered, dread curling in my stomach. "What now?" I shouted, halting in the glow. My instincts urged caution, but something compelled me to keep moving, to trust what was happening. Forward, the girl urged, glancing back at the darkness closing in. The figures had paused, and I could see the sharp outlines of something shifting behind them. An ominous presence that made my skin crawl. The girl tugged my arm, urging me to continue down the narrow path. This way. We can't stop. Every instinct in me wanted to turn back, to retreat to a place where the familiar echoed through mundane walls. But we couldn't go back now. So I followed, the light dimming as we moved further from the figures, who seemed hesitant to cross a threshold we could not see. Then the whispers thundered, a low growl churned through the air surrounding the shadows behind us, a warning that sent shockwaves through my veins. Help us! The voices cried once more, their sound spiraling into a haunting anthem. I didn't have time to think. We pressed on, the trees enclosing us as we ventured further down, uncertain of what lay ahead. Suddenly, the path opened into a clearing. A breathtaking sight unfolded before us, a grove accented by luminescent stones dotting the grassy floor. In the center stood a stark stone altar, worn by time and resonating with an energy that sent a shiver down my spine. What is this place? I murmured, my awe tinged with trepidation. It's a ritual site, she speculated, her gaze drawn to the altar. Maybe it's connected to the diary. My stomach tightened at the thought. Would the page beckoning for rescue also help us break free? I stepped closer, studying the markings engraved across the stone's surface. Within those symbols lay secrets, hidden truths begging to be unveiled. But just as my fingers brushed against the weathered stone, the air shifted. Something was coming, roiling from the darkness. A set of glowing eyes emerged, fierce and unyielding. Before I could react, the shadows surged forward, coalescing into a form that felt both familiar and alien. Do not seek what you cannot understand, it intoned, voice laced with malice. The darkness twisted into a shape that felt dangerously close to what I had glimpsed before, the terror pursuing me echoing all around. Run! I screamed, pulling at the girl, and we took off away from the altar. But the dark figure surged after us, its growl resonating like thunder and ringing with an ominous promise. No! I yelled, panic clenching at my insides. We can't let it catch us. We darted back into the denser part of the woods, weaving between trees as the howling grew louder, the shadows thrumming with unseen energy wanting to suffocate us. Over here! She shouted, spotting a thick tree with a hollowed base. Without hesitation, we dove into the opening. The air was cool as we huddled close together, holding our breaths. Will it find us? I whispered, heart waning hope as the echoes of the howling crept closer. I don't know, she replied, voice trembling. But I can feel that the forest is alive. It wants us to be part of something. We can't stay here, I insisted, peering through the hole. The shadows danced around us, an unfurling web hungry for our fear. Suddenly, an echoing roar reverberated through the trees, the growling figure outside thrumming with frustration. The ground beneath us trembled, as if awakening from a long slumber. Feeling the vibrations course through me, I sensed that the forest itself was alive, fighting back against the darkness. It's not just us, I realized. These shadows, they're connected to something deeper. Maybe we can fight back, the girl said, her voice gaining strength. The altar, it's calling to us. Are you sure? I hesitated, dread pulling at what it might demand. We have to, her voice cut off as the howling erupted into a frantic roar. The darkness lurked at the base of our sanctuary, searching, seeking an opening. And then, amidst the chaos, I felt the pull of something whispering from the depths of my mind. We have to go, I urged, adrenaline seizing my limbs. Gripping her hand, I urged her to follow, and together we raced back toward the altar, our sanctuary against the encroaching shadows. Upon reaching the stone altar, I felt a surge of energy pulse through the air, intensifying with every step. I reached for the markings, tracing them with desperate fingers, feeling the weight of the forest's unyielding spirit beneath my touch. Together! I shouted, urging the girl onward. We pressed our palms against the stone, the markings glowing faintly beneath our hands. The air shifted, and with a great heave, the shadows recoiled, pulled back by the awakening energy seeping through the ground. The howling transformed now a cacophony of fury interwoven with pleading tones. They were angry, yes, but terrified. It seemed as if the shadows had more to fear now that we had embraced the power we found in this timeless grove. "What is happening?" the girl exclaimed, her eyes wide as the luminescence brightened intensely. "We're becoming part of this," I declared, feeling a surge of strength course through my veins. "We can end this." As our voices melded with the whispers of the depths, light surged like a wave, pushing back the darkness. The shadows dissolved, their forms shifting and fading, leaving echoes of despair drifting back into the woods. But in the wake of our triumph, unease lingered. The night held questions still, fears that danced at the edge of understanding. Other shadows crept beyond the boundaries of the altar, unsolved terrors echoing within the forest, flickers of history whispering unseen. As the last howl faded, the energy dissipated, and the grove fell silent. Yet I knew that this wasn't the end. This was merely a step, a moment in a larger dance between light and dark. "I still feel it," I whispered, turning to the girl. "It's not over, is it?" "No," she replied softly, her eyes gazing into the dark horizon. "But we'll face it together." And therein lay the uncertainty, the unanswered questions pulling strings deep within me. We had prevailed against one threat, but far too many mysteries lingered. It was a victory fraught with shadows still lurking, and I knew I would never truly escape their grasp. Something had changed within me, something far beyond understanding. And as we stood together, the light of dawn breaking through, I realized we would carry this weight together. The journey was just beginning.